All right, thank you for joining the WWSD Podcast. We are sponsored by Collector's Maze. If you love comics and anything fandom related, be sure to check them out at collectorsmaze.com for the virtual Comic-Con experience. I'm Kyle, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Seamus and Josh. And we have a very special guest tonight, Dominic Pace. Dominic is an actor with over 80 acting credits. You may know him from one of his most recent roles as Gekko the Bounty Hunter from the Mandalorian series. He has launched the Gekko the Bounty Hunter comic based on his character and will be touring to promote the book in the next few months. So Dominic, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Nice having you, Dominic.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Hello to all your listeners. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
So Dominic, do you want to give us a little rundown of how you got started into acting?
Sure. I love sports. Baseball was sort of my original passion. I love pitching. The 80s of sports, growing up in New York was just absolutely magical. But I knew after, tapping out probably at 16, 17 miles an hour, the adrenaline, I'm sorry, at 16, 17 years old, at about 80 miles an hour, it just really wasn't going to happen. And to pursue it into college, I thought was just going to be wasted years. When I was 16 years old, I started in a high school musical. My high school musical was Grease. Actually, I had hair at the time, if you can imagine. And just the adrenaline rush was very similar to being an athlete. To have that power, the feeling of striking someone out, to be in front of 800 people. I gravitated towards it as opposed to I got stage fright. And it was just such a gratifying feeling that as I served 1 year, I was in 1 year in college there up at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. The city just kept calling me with one audition or the next. As difficult as it was, the first few calls that I had was actually cattle calls. One, believe it or not, the very famous Blair Witch Project. I think it was probably 400 people lined up on Lafayette Street. I said, it's about 3 kids. I told my wife after 3 hours, I said, let's get the hell out of here. But ultimately, just the adrenaline built more and more working with NYU film directors off-Broadway and Tony and Tina's Wedding, being in For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner, and little by little, starting in 2002, just a very steady stream of co-stars, guest stars on national television, to where I just always viewed it as an amazing challenge, adrenaline rush, not only on screen, but also off screen in terms of the challenge. I guess I would sort of say that it's similar to a real estate agent, to where, those sales are sometimes few and far in between, but once you close that deal, there's no better feeling. And even to this day, it's been quite magical. The inspirations also, as a kid, who didn't love movies of the 80s, everything from the magic of George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, Joe Dante, James Cameron. I knew that I wanted to be on that screen. I wanted to be a part of it in some format or other. I think we were spoiled with 1980s films, not to mention John Hughes. So to just want to follow in their footsteps, at least to be one of their puppets in one way or another, was just definitely a dream of mine, even at a very young age. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to have followed that through for so many years.
Nice.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So go ahead, James.
No, you can go ahead, Josh.
So what was your first major acting gig you considered? I know you've been in so much already, but what was the first time you really felt like, oh, I'm finally making it?
Yeah, I think it's similar to a baseball player, to where you don't really necessarily feel it with an independent film, but really when you step into that, major stadium in the big leagues. And for me, it wasn't until after 10 years of training in New York, I was the Bill Esper studio, the actor studio, moved out here in 1998 after doing a film with Miramax, which still was kind of low budget. So I didn't really feel that pop, but it was ABC's NYPD Blue. It was the 11th season, and I received a guest star, and I got to walk on that Fox lot with my own trailer in 2003 opposite Gordon Clapp and Henry Simmons. And it was an absolute dream come true to at least have told myself, even at that age, no matter what's going to happen, because obviously this business is so unpredictable, that I at least touch the sky one time. So for a character actor like myself, 2003, NYPD Blue would definitely have been that moment in September of 2003.
Cool. So, you want to talk a little bit about your role on the Mandalorian?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I hesitate to use the word role. But I will say that in Star Wars land, any character I think has a tremendous amount of significance, which is why this is sort of taken off to what it's been. In terms of a secondary team opportunity, I've been sort of a blue collar actor for many, many years. On top of the guest stars and co-stars, most of us working actors, the 99 percenters, you've got to take every opportunity you can. For me, I've just always have genuinely loved being on set. And by doing that, sometimes I'll accept second team work. In 2002, I had the privilege of being opposite Hugh Jackman and Shuler Hensley. I doubled Frankenstein. I stood in for Frankenstein on Van Helsing, which required a certain amount of prosthetics. The first time that I put it on my face, it wasn't like Halloween where we had those plastic little one-hole things as a kid where we just, be sweating by the end of the night and literally one rubber band be snapping off you or whatever. It was really, really claustrophobic, but it got to a point as I got older where it almost became comforting. It was almost like a security loving blanket. I did Bright with Will Smith as one of the orcs, and most people would be freaking out after 12 hours with this thing on your head. But after a while, it just started feeling cozy. Now, prosthetics aren't necessarily the greatest talent in the world, but ultimately they don't want people who are claustrophobic. They don't want people who are fidgety. They obviously want people with great attitudes. That sort of transcended into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being called back 2 times for a company that was called Legacy Effects. They are probably one of the most elite companies in Hollywood, everything from Marvel to Disney to DC. And when they're not CGIing a character, they go to Legacy Effects, particularly, specifically this guy by the name of Brian Sight, who actually did Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, as well as the Avengers. And I went in for just a simple makeup test. Now, I don't know if you can see behind me, just ever since I was a kid, the greatest imagination. I mean, what we stemmed off of 1980 was the action figures, the 12 original action figures. I was about 5 years old. The first words that I learned to spell was Jawa. To hear John Williams music, it was the most magical thing as a kid. To sit in the theater in 1980, 81, and to watch Empire Strikes Back with a packed audience. It was bigger than life at that age. It had such a profound effect on me to where the believability of Hamill and Ford and Billy D. Williams and Fisher was just beyond. And the world was so big at that time. It had such an effect on me. I think just like so many Star Wars fans from Generation X and older, to where even 40 years later, we're still talking about the series. We still debate it one way or another. And I had the simple makeup test. They wouldn't tell me what it was. 2 weeks later, I go in for a project that was nicknamed Huckleberry. And a man by the name of Joseph Porro, he had probably one of the most unique looks you can imagine, almost as if he's from outer space himself. I mean, just the most unique looking man, handsome man. And I went in and I went into this door where it was, they kept us all outside. So it was just one at a time. And I said, God, I've been in the business for so long. This is just weird in terms of the procedure, the NDA agreement, everything else. This seems a little bit more special than what I'm normally used to. And I can remember going in and seeing the artwork on the walls. And I'll tell you, any Star Wars fan would be able to relate to that artwork. And that's all of a sudden where I remember my hands started going just a little bit numb. I was taken into another room. And on top of, the opportunity to potentially be in the Star Wars universe, to just kind of up the ante, there was my name. And it was also the words bounty hunter there. And so to make it really special, this makeup test with my bald head, there were about 3 different options in the room. And Brian Sipe came up and he pulled Joseph aside. He said, I don't want to give him a mask. I want to do him from scratch. So he came to me and he said, you were so patient and kind. I want to give you the most detailed makeup of all the bounty hunters within those first 2 weeks. And I was just obviously beside myself. I wish I can tell you that I was excited and overjoyed. I just didn't know what to make of it at that time. So it was just beyond words. The 2 weeks of filming was just like nothing I've ever experienced before. And to this day, it just still amazes me. And I'm still beyond words that I had a privilege to be a part of this amazing universe that's been so special for so many people.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So you actually went to the audition. You didn't know it was for Star Wars at all. Like you had no idea it was even in that camp of Star Wars. Did you say it was just a makeup audition?
It was just a test. So it wasn't necessarily an audition, but I did give him my business card. He knew that I had previous experience. And from having previous experience, he ended up picking me from that there. So,
okay.
Yeah. Forgive me there. I just want to get on my feet here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking at your IMDb credits, It says that you've actually done some stunt work. Is that true?
That is correct. I did a very cheesy movie called Megalodon. It's one of those things that I didn't actually know was Asylum. There's a corny movie called Windy City Heat, where this guy goes in. It was produced by Jimmy Kimmel. It's a great movie if you guys get a chance to spoof on this guy who thought he was doing a serious film, and it ends up being obviously this complete freaking joke. But you guys, if you get a chance, your listeners as well, Windy City Heat is probably one of the funniest things ever. You know, you feel bad for the guy too, but anyhow. I didn't associate that Sharknado was with this production company. So the whole time, if you watch Megalodon, I'm going at it like you wouldn't believe, like nonstop. Like this thing is like freaking Charlton Heston from start to finish. I'm giving everything I got. Michael Madsen comes out and said he doesn't give two shits. He's like, I'm just making a paycheck or whatever. But stunts throughout, I'm a big guy, so I wouldn't go as far as saying that I'm a stunt guy. Those people, God bless them, they risk their lives. You have no idea what they do. Unfortunately, deaths every year. I'm friends with a few of them, but it's what's called stage combat, where you take a punch, you take a gunshot, everything from NCIS, the regular one, to Prison Break, to Rizzoli and Isles, General Hospital. And then also Megalodon as well. And then also a fun gunshot scene with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Johnson as well on Amazon. So a handful of that. We're still young enough to do it. Even that day with the battle at Navarro, I was totally game, especially being a huge Star Wars fan, to go ahead and do whatever the stunt guy needed me to do. I think any Star Wars fan would be in the same boat where they, it's one thing to be a Cantina character, but it was another thing to actually partake in some of the action. So I volunteered my stunt stuff with him as well, in terms of just, falls and shots and everything like that. So yeah, a little bit of extensive experience, but also at the same time, not a stunt man. It really, those guys, they go to school, and everything from those 3-story falls to really taking hard hits and even falling down hills, which is absolutely insane to me. It's just amazing what they do for our entertainment. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for a lot of them there.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
So you made a comment that you're like a bigger dude. I've noticed like a lot of the casting you've been a part of has always been like henchman or like hired goon or bodyguard, bounce. Are you getting typecasting these roles, or is these the type of things you like be acting as? Because you seem like a really sweet guy. Like you seem really nice and everything. And I'm like, you're not a henchman, but like,
right.
You're kind of
I know. I've got a great story with that. My grandfather was just about to pass away. It was a series premiere of Rizzoli and Isles, and the casting director told me exactly what you're telling me. And the one thing is, for me, I don't know if you remember that old Sylvester Stallone, the movie Over the Top, where you turn that hat around and all of a sudden you're a whole different person. And that's what we do. It is acting, it is performing. But the one thing, you bring up a good point, sometimes during the casting auditions, they're asking how the kids are, how your wife is. And I'm like, oh, they're great. Everybody's fine. You are like, you're going in for like a mass, serial killer. So what I try to do in the most polite way is try to keep it really short. Because then all of a sudden they'll be like, the same thing, the same gesture. So they say, hey, he's a really, really nice guy. I don't know if he's going to fit this role. But thankfully now we have enough reel to back it up in terms of the fact that when we turn it on, we turn it on there. I don't mind a typecast, I don't want to get into all the politics and social stuff, but I mean, look, Italians, I mean, we used to break some legs. I mean, what do you want? It is what it is. So, I mean, for me, it's like, I love Tarantino. I love Scorsese because they write about life. I love Spike Lee because he writes about life. So I'm one of those guys where it's like, I'm not offended. It's like, look, I'm not the boy next door, and that's okay. So I don't mind. I just genuinely love being on set. I love being able to sort of get into sort of these malicious characters. And at the same time, sometimes it turns out to be a lot of fun. I had a second team bit with Barry season 1 and 2 with Bill Hader. It was absolutely amazing. It was so much fun. But just playing those characters, I mean, for me, I don't need to be accepted as anything else. The only thing, I mean, I'd love is just the opportunity maybe to have a little more discipline in the gym. I was up for Game of Thrones years ago, and it was sort of heartbreaking because, again, you've got to be in there 3-4 hours a day in order to sometimes carry yourself with those characters. But all the more reason, I think that's why it's so special when you do book, because when they hold the bar that high, it means that when you actually do book, you appreciate the fact that you achieve something. You know, I'm not into all the participation trophies of, hey, you know, I want to be the handsome guy next door. It's like, you know, you get in shape and maybe you are, you know?
Yeah. So, last year you starred in you had a feature film, Anonymous Killers, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like, starring in that film?
It was absolutely amazing. You know, obviously, as we know, there's a tremendous amount of social issues right now. The word privilege is being thrown around. It's very subjective, but it was a director that I truly respected. I didn't agree with him on every single issue that he had, but he served 18 years in prison for a simple drug deal. And that definitely says something to you, you know, about our criminal justice system. He was 18 years old at that time. It's getting pretty solid reviews on Amazon there, more or less, I think 3.5 stars out of 4 or 5 there, which you can't complain. It took us 5 years to complete. If you're not backed by a major studio, guys, I'll tell you, I can't have enough respect for some of these independent films, especially if they put their blood, sweat, and tears in it. And this project took 5 years to complete. It's a great, compelling story, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, left or right, to where, you know, you get to discuss. And the one thing the director, I'll never forget, said he wanted to make a film that's remarkable. And what he meant by that was that at the end of the film, it means that you're going to remark on it. You're going to talk about it, talk about the issues. And the one thing I like about him, and the reason I love this film, is because he doesn't really necessarily shove it down your face, left or right. You can sort of have sort of this subjective look at it when you're done, that sort of goes in line with your own beliefs and saying, hey, look, you know, in order to get ahead in this country, you know, maybe you do need a bit of privilege, or in order to get in the head of this country, don't commit a crime. You know, just work hard and good things will happen. But I think the way that he tells this story in sort of a Tarantino-esque way, with $1 million budget, I thought was beautifully done. And if you guys get a chance, your listeners, definitely check it out. It's still on Amazon right now there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. So Dominic, I think Seamus might actually have a bone to pick with you. The mayor of Sioux City, Iowa, they officially named July 18th Gekko the Bounty Hunter Day.
Yes.
Well, that's Seamus's birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay.
It's like my birthday.
Yeah. I was like, no, Seamus, that's Dominic Pace Day.
You're stealing my thunder, man.
I got to tell you, I mean, look, let's call it what it is. You know, it's a second team character role, but the one thing I'll never forget, looking at my son that day, the mayor comes in town, you know, he's like, oh, shake your hand. We're one of those guys, you know, the hell with it. We get it. And I said, okay, no problem. And the whole thing, all I couldn't stop thinking about was Filoni and Favreau, and said, what the hell must they be thinking right now? Because then 3 days later, I go down to Cleveland, Tennessee. They give me the key to the city. And, you know, granted, I can't tell you how grateful I am. And I think it's an amazing effort to support small business. But nevertheless, I really honestly feel like they're going to make, you know, there'll be a great documentary on this someday called Gekko the Bounty Hunter, to where we had such an impact and from something so small. And again, don't get me wrong. I've got behind me, I've got Yak Face and Blue Snaggletooth, and I've got a Monomon, and I think even Loose, they go for about $300 to $400. So there's no question that the rarity of Star Wars characters are extremely special. But let's take a step back here. I mean, literally for 25 freaking years on TV 1 million different times. And the one thing that sort of garners that attention is this Gekko, is this, you know, one-of-a-kind bounty hunter, just because Star Wars is that special. I think it's amazing, but don't ever think for one day I am not completely humbled by it, just specifically because in no other franchise, even Marvel, you can't even tell me, even with Marvel, if you were on the screen for 3 minutes, I don't think you would get this kind of traction. But with the Star Wars fan base, at least up until now, at least up until next year, to where God knows how much content is going to be brought out, every character, I think, has that level of significance, and I can't tell you how proud I am with the attention to be able to help others, especially during this time of COVID there.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that brings up like the actual Gekko character. I mean, you're spearheading this comic book. You mind going into that a bit, like how that came to fruition?
So anyhow, Marvel, there's an amazing editor over there at Marvel Star Wars Bounty Hunters, and a great guy. I emailed him probably about 1.5 years ago, and I said, hey, just FYI, I know you're getting started with this comic book, Star Wars Bounty Hunters. I said, just FYI, the fans are really taken to this character. I said, what do you think? I mean, just, if you can throw it by LFL, let them know, hey, people are pretty impressed, with just the look of what Brian did, everything else. He loved it. He was absolutely amazed. He said, Dominic, he said, can you just send me over all the stuff that's going on, the Gekko the Bounty Hunter Day and this and that and everything else? So I said, absolutely. Yeah, no problem at all. So I sent it over to him, and we waited for a few months. He's like, if it happens, I'm going to try to get you an issue 12 because there's a window where there's a group of bounty hunters. I said, God, how amazing would that be to be, amongst Boba and Bosk and Forlom and Zuckuss and all that, because it takes place during that Empire era. And I told, I emailed Lucasfilm. I said, look, there was no shot of me dying, number one, but also the fact that Mandalorian takes place after Empire. Who knows what this guy's origin is? So anyhow, they got back to me and they said, look, they want to put just kind of a hold right now on the, Mandalorian characters. That includes Gina and Carl and Pedro, all the characters, my friend Chris Bartlett there. So just hang tight. And, whether I think Doug Chang's coming out with a comic. So, you never know what's going to happen. A few fans came to me just from doing this tour. And, even with the Funko Pop, Funko actually loves it. But the same thing, they're waiting for LFL. And these fans are one gentleman from Maryland, JP Faust, an illustrator from Romania. His name is Flavio Pop, and a colorist from Brazil. They came together, they followed me, and they said, hey, listen, we just came up with an idea that we would love to not tread on anything from Lucasfilm, but just sort of make an origin, or not necessarily an origin story, but what happens after Navarro with Gekko, because he was not seen dying. And I said, you know what, we'll give it a shot, see what happens. I said, just, please leave out lightsabers and the Force and blasters, the Death Star and, Vader or any of that kind of stuff. He says, yeah, we want to classify. As a matter of fact, he started fleshing out my Wikipedia, this JP Faust. He's like, I just have an idea where I think this character's from. And then there was a gentleman in Colorado. He's like, I know what your ship would look like. Can you please let me draw it? So little by little, they just started piecing something together. And I said, let's go ahead and do it. I had such a success with the fan base, with the charitable organizations. And for me to be able to have this, at least in the interim, as a opportunity to, because I didn't want to do another tour with just signing photos, but to have another opportunity to be able to give back to the community, also with the 501st Legion. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with them, as well as the Rebel Legion, as well as the Mandalorian Mercs, and just an opportunity to just kind of spread positivity and joy through this character, through this fan fiction comic book, and sell the autograph. I thought it was a great opportunity. So come Friday, we'll be posting an announcement on social media, just a 1 minute thank you to the creators of the comic, and also that it's available for purchase. I have two sons, Dante and Bennett. My 15-year-old son, I had one of the greatest high school lives, just times of my life with my friends and sports and girlfriends, etc., like so many of us. And it breaks my heart that he's missing out on that. He's 15 years old, and just like so many kids across the country, he's been missing out with this Zoom, and they're having these freaking watch parties and everything else. But to me, it's not the same. So the one gift that I want to give him as a blue-collar actor, blue-collar worker, is to see if I can take care of his college education. So that ultimately is going to be the point of this tour, which we are going on nonstop over 35 states, including Alaska and Hawaii, all the way from April to August, to go ahead and not only, support small business, but also promote the character. And God willing, Disney and Dave and John will take notice, and who knows what the future will be. And I think it'll make a great story in many years to come.
And I know you're teaming up with Collectors Maze. You mind going in about that team up as well, since we are sponsored by the Collectors Maze?
Sure, absolutely. Wichita, we had it's just kind of a smaller appearance there last year, because I think we just were passing through. But this time we're giving them a Sunday, and I believe it's right at the end of June there. And that will be at Prairie Dog Comics in Wichita, Kansas, sponsored by Collectors Maze there. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for everybody out there. And I think they've got, other things, we've been hitting a lot of the pop culture spots as well. And I think they have the original KFC or Pizza Hut in Wichita. So we love all those little fun little stops, bucket lists along the way. So we're looking forward to that before we head over to North Dakota for that Tuesday there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Dominic, you're involved in a lot of different charity work. Can you kind of elaborate on some of that and what it means to you?
Absolutely. Our grandparents' generation, I'm sure some of your grandparents, they went through the Depression. My grandfather was in the CCCs. Italian Americans, we did not have it easy. World War II, I was inspired by my maternal grandfather, William Tagliaferri. I cannot tell you, not to mention the teachers, the coaches, the parents. When I was a kid, I can't tell you how grateful I am to live in this generation where when you research history, you realize how lucky we are. It's a lot of people can say there's a lot of entitled people out there, but for someone like myself to have two beautiful boys, to have a roof over my head, and when you again hear other people's stories, you understand how grateful you are. Also, to be able to do what I love and to be in the workplace and know how hard it is to have a job, a 9 to 5 where you can't get out of because you have to support your family, and to be able to do what I love for 25 years. I can't tell you how grateful I am for that, and to be able to give back as much as I can as a way of saying thank you. I'm unlike a lot of the talent there. I don't charge for selfies. For me, it's just a genuine honor to have people that want to take a photo with me, but at the same time, to be able to pay it forward. I used to be in the restaurant industry, and one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given, it's better to have 70% of everything instead of 100% of nothing. And I think also culturally too, coming from a religious background, to help others, we're only here for a short amount of time. And the more I think, you can inspire people and help people, the richer your life becomes. So for me, it's less about, as much as I'd love to have some dream Dodge muscle car, I think about it, being able to help my son and being able to help my family as well as others, especially through this time, is more gratifying for me at 46 years old than anything else there. I've been fortunate to have good publicists as well, to where a lot of the red carpet events before COVID, before the Mandalorian, were involved in helping others. And it's just such a beautiful feeling when you're able to give back to your local communities there.
Cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What would be like some of your dream franchises to work on, since you already worked on so much, but like what do you need to finish out your belt here of awesome franchises to work on?
We kind of hit the trifecta there. We were in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, this is not at the Samuel Jackson level, but even in Birds of Prey, play one of the bad guys there when she was in the alleyway and she was trying to figure out a way to get out and such. So, we kind of hit that trifecta on a smaller level. If you Google Dominic Pace, Lex Luthor, I actually tried to pitch a campaign years ago there before, I think after Kevin Spacey, but before Jesse Eisenberg, to want to play Luthor. I think that would certainly be a dream role for me. But ultimately for me, to continue on with Gekko and to be part of the Star Wars community that does so much good, that's ultimately the dream. I love modern crime dramas. I can probably do it the rest of my life. But at the same time, the reason I got involved, just like I talked about before, was just that Back to the Future magic, that Indiana Jones, that sci-fi that takes you to another world and sort of fantasy and excitement. So for me, just the epitome of that is right where we are, and that's Star Wars. And what better character than to be able to play a imposing bounty hunter there.
Cool. So do you have, if you had to distill your all your acting experience into like one most important lesson that you've learned throughout your career, what do you think that would be?
Sure. I equate it to sports. Right now I'm a weekend golfer, and it's embarrassing to watch. It's actually really frustrating because they pair you up with people all the time. And for me, it's like I just want to get out there and just mess up alone. It's like because automatically the competitor in you ends up happening. But I guess just the essential advice would be the same thing similar to an athlete, and that's get the hell out of your way, get out of your head. And from doing that, it's amazing what your body can transform into. Just like, hitting a shot, once you keep thinking about it and you're conscious of the room. And trust me, I've been there. I've had celebrity directors where I go into a producer session. A producer session is the callback where there's 12 or 15 people in there. It's not just a little 24-year-old woman casting director to where you're like, I can eat you for breakfast. It's Peter Weller or it's Emilio Estevez or Tim Matheson, things like that, to where all of a sudden you start becoming conscious of the room. But the quicker you're able to get out of your head and to just be in the zone, just like an athlete, that's when you end up doing the best work.
Okay. That's good advice. I think it's good advice for things other than acting too, and sports. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Get out of your own head.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of your own way. Yeah.
So Dominic, what do you think would be your most difficult role that you've had to do? What was the most challenging for you?
That's a great question. I think when the characters aren't conflicted, I think a lot of times when you're being done to, I had a situation, it was a short film when I was near NYU. I stayed with a lot of the directors from NYU. And one of the biggest issues is making something to where the other characters that are in the show are more colorful than your character, to where more or less you're reacting to their, sort of accentuated personalities, but you don't necessarily have one. And to be able to find the interesting part of your character through sort of the monotony of just a sort of a character that sort of plateaus out in many ways, where it isn't necessarily the writing, it's just the fact that if the other actors have so much of a scenario, it sort of conflicts if they're bringing too many characters in to where you have too much of an amplified situation or too many amplified personalities. I think that's probably the most challenging, is when it's sort of more of the subtleties, almost like Anthony Hopkins or Daniel Day-Lewis, they can execute it in such a beautiful way, to where you're not given that specific sort of style of who this character is. I think that's probably ultimately the most challenging there.
So you've done a lot of acting. I mean, we could all agree to it at this point. You've been in a lot of things, but have you tried any of the other things like writing, directing, producing? Have you tried any of those other areas of film and television?
I had this idea. It's just more and more the industry is becoming more and more politically correct. But from so many years in terms of survival jobs, one of them was waiting tables. And years ago, I came up with sort of this Trey Parker, Matt Stone, Seth MacFarlane kind of idea with maybe Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite, of this superhero waiter who extorts money from cheap tippers. And his sidekick is a busboy named Sancho. And basically, they have this sort of dispatcher who's sort of like an Alfred from Batman. And they go out on these, sort of excursions, and they are there for like the common worker. It's sort of like this blue collar superhero, in a way. And there's been certain similar comedies that have been done in the spirit, but it would just be sort of a nod to the common worker who's got to deal with Karens in customer service. And basically his weapons are a wine opener and a pepper mill and a serving tray. It's something ultimately, if we ever break big, I'd love to get produced by one of those guys. Where it would just be sort of tongue in cheek. But again, we're not in the 1990s anymore. You got to be so careful in terms of who's made fun of, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's called The Server. And he's got a little interesting backstory. His mother was run over by a Dine and Dashers from a previous thing. And he's got this Italian sort of godfather butler who was like, dying like Mick from Rocky, and sort of hands him this magical freaking bottle opener and says, "Avenge me!" This great freaking idea. It's just, like I said, in this very sensitive, hypersensitive society, that would have to be written like on eggshells in order not so nobody's hurt.
Yeah, that sounds funny.
Yeah. Got me laughing.
The server. So yeah.
Yeah, I've worked in service industry, and I love the idea.
Yeah.
Yes. It was. I did a little short film of it. It's just, again, they'll cancel you in 2 seconds if one thing offends one person or others. They got to be careful. But Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker had so much fun in their heyday. With Kentucky Fried Movie and Naked Gun and Airplane and all that. So hopefully one of these days we can get back to that kind of comedy there.
Cool.
Is there a particular actor or actress that kind of inspired you to get into acting?
Yeah, look, this is the age of strong women and strong human beings left and right there. But for me, nothing epitomizes the alpha male more than Harrison Ford. He's just been able to take control, same with, Burt Reynolds, to where, he took control of the screen, whether it's Get Off My Plane or whether it's I Hate Snakes, I mean, the man is just beyond, and they are few and far between these days. You've got these little pretty boys, and I guess a lot of the ladies like them. But for me, just commanding men, to have that strong presence for me was always inspirational, because they literally grasped you during when you're watching a film. As far as performance wise, we talk about those subtleties before. The one thing that amazes me is Daniel Day-Lewis. There's a movie that literally would bore the heck out of you if any other actor ever tried it. It was called... oh God, I don't want to say it was called The Seamstress, but it was something similar to that he did with P.T. Anderson. It was his last film that he did. The Phantom Thread. It was called The Phantom Thread. And it's just one of those things to where you just marvel at how brilliant an actor he is, because any other 3-hour film with an actor with this type of character would just bore the heck out of you. But literally, you can watch this man watch paint dry and just chew your popcorn and totally say that was $18 worth of entertainment. I don't know how he does it. He just literally goes to another level with it. But I can watch that man do anything. And it's just, it also is sort of a compliment to his career that he retired, because that is something to where he's telling everybody that's how much work it takes for him to put into his films. Even Abraham Lincoln, everything that he's done, Last of the Mohicans, you name it, he just goes above and beyond any other actor, and it's so ridiculously inspirational to watch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite movie? Oh, you didn't really say explicitly, but I get a feel for where you're gonna say. But what would be your top?
Yeah, you just can't go wrong with Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back.
Empire.
I mean, it literally, the whole thing I think that makes Star Wars, separates it from all the other sci-fi. Ironically, I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, but it's really ultimately the parallels to life, the father and the son, ultimately believing in yourself. Look at this right now. We're going on a tour, hitting 60 different comic book stores with less than 1 minute time. You can't tell me that the teachings of Yoda ultimately in life don't have something to do with that. I can't do anything with this. There were 25 other bounty hunters. There's nothing I can do with this. What can I possibly do with this opportunity? And the one thing, now again in the country where it's like we complain about, hey, I don't have this opportunity, I don't have that opportunity. And you think of Yoda and you think of the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm going to figure something out and I'm going to make it happen. And when that happens, I'm going to show you and I'm going to show my kids that this is what happens when you don't try and you do it. And people believe in you, an amazing thing happens. So ultimately for me, it's just not only the artistic aspect of that, how much time him and his team put into the special effects of that just literally had to be handmade piece by piece, but also just the beautiful arc of the story that Kirshner gave us, I just think is just second to none. And again, just the time that it hits you too. When you're young, I did a play and I always reference this play. It was a screenwriter, his name was Yale Udoff, and he had this beautiful line in this play where he said, you can only touch them when you're young. And what he was referring to was the birds and the baby birds, and then they go and fly off. And I think it's the same with movies. So when we watch Goonies, we watch Stand By Me when we're kids, we watch E.T. when we're kids, it pulls at your heartstrings so much. And for me, I will never forget being 5 years old in that theater, again, watching Empire Strikes Back. And not only that, literally one of the greatest films of all time. That for me just really is the first thing that comes to mind there.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome you got to work on that, after it being so meaningful for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, without question. I appreciate it every single day, even if this is what it is. But I'm confident there will be a future there, without question.
So, have you had anybody have any impressive cosplay with Gekko that come to these tour dates?
Yeah, I mean, well, I was even more impressed with that. In Pennsylvania, I was in Zanipoli. It's just north of Pittsburgh, and it's called Curio Cool. And all of a sudden, I got my head down. I'm signing autographs, and somebody pushes forward a Funko Pop, and it's not only the Funko Pop of Gekko, but it's the box. It's everything. And I said, where the hell did you get this? How did you get it? And they had it, the custom made. And there's a guy in Texas who did a Black Series figure, and then there's a guy in Indiana who's doing, it's called Big Kid Bricks. He did a custom a mini Lego figure. The 501st right now, the 501st Legion, they do so many good things for their community. They're actually putting together what's called a CRL. And the CRL is sort of an official costume to where, you have all of the accurate descriptions of the character, from the gauntlets to the boots to the robe to the prosthetic and everything else. So they're putting that together as we speak. But I'm hoping when we go back to cons, and hopefully after the momentum of this tour, I'm hoping that Gekko goes to the next level to where people will be cosplaying him. I hope so. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, where do you think that the Star Wars franchise is going now that they've kind of wrapped up the main storyline?
You mean the Mandalorian?
Yeah. Well, let's hopefully not get ahead of ourselves, because the one thing I do think there's something really beautiful and special between the parallels of brotherhood, in my opinion, with Kenobi. I think for me, I think then that maybe we can talk about that because then, obviously they're moving forward. But I think there's something really special and almost biblical with Kenobi being on that planet, watching over the Chosen One, and also the magic, if it's written correctly, between him and Anakin, to where it's something deeper than we've seen. So I'm hoping that before we move forward, there's just a little bit of a pearl from our childhood there that I'm hoping that they execute, and it's not just all about the visual between the those 4 episodes there. So I'm really excited about that one ultimately. But of course, yeah, I mean, I think with bounty hunters, it's, who doesn't love them? I mean, you have this perfect balance of where, they're balanced between good and bad, and they're just basically, for me, there's a lot of parallels to the independent contractor in life. It's, I always think of a movie in terms of my own life story, to where, I actually did a film years ago where sort of there's parallels to sort of your movie character and also, your real life. And in many ways, the bounty hunter is the independent contractor just doing what he has to do in order to survive, in order to provide for his family or to provide for himself. So I think there's some interesting little pearls within the bounty hunter, the book of the, bounty hunters. But I'm really, really genuinely excited to watch Christensen and McGregor there again. I think they have a great chemistry. McGregor really is one of the greatest actors of our time. He just is filled with, charm and charisma and also intensity, and he's in control. So I think that's going to be really special. And what makes it even more special for me is that Deborah Chow pulled me out of the cantina to be part of that standoff and to flank Carl. And Deborah Chow is actually heading up that series there. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, you guys got any more questions?
I got some lightning round questions. If Kyle, you have any more substantial questions before we move to the shorter questions?
Yeah, I've got one question. When you were a kid and you were a fan of Star Wars, and you probably never thought you'd be part of that one day, and then you find yourself in a role in Star Wars, what would you say to the kids that are seeing you now in the Star Wars universe today and dreaming to be a part of that? What would you say to them if you could just go out and talk to them?
Oh man. Well, obviously, it is a difficult business. It is a difficult trade. I will share with you one story that flashed me directly back to when I was imagining, just like all of us, with my action figures, my playset, my Millennium Falcon. It used to be so difficult sometimes to get that blaster perfectly in, say, Dengar's hand or Boba Fett's hand, and to have them stand on your carpet, no matter depending how shaggy it was in the 80s and such. But there was I ended up picking the biggest blaster, and automatically the 8-year-old child came out in me. And I remember putting it into my fist, and I remember dropping it down the same way that I dropped, the figures. Dropped the blaster into the figures when I was a kid. That just brought me back directly there. It really is ultimately persistence. I've been in this for 25 years. And if it's something that you truly want, even the sacrifice of living in Los Angeles is a pain. But unfortunately, you have to be here. The business is still here more or less. Then it will happen for you. It's just a matter of persistence that literally you're looking at somebody where it literally after 25 years of hustling and not one day has passed to where we haven't been, focusing on the agent or focusing on submitting or auditioning, etc. Things will happen with persistence. And I'm hoping that the overall story of Gekko will have a beautiful ending after our persistence of now what will be over 30,000 miles of travel to campaign for this character.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about Star Wars is even the smallest characters, they end up having these beautiful backstories, and the fact that you're really taking that on and embodying that character. I think that's just
it's not just him; it's the
awesome.
fans. That's he became an internet sensation. Did that surprise you? You just wake up one morning and there's all this Twitter stuff. What's going on here? Or did it come slowly, or did you feel it building up?
I think it really is a tribute to, I don't mean to knock some of my peers, but I think what really is very helpful is being present with people, listening to them and caring about people's opinions and caring about the fans and sort of taking a balanced approach of positivity to where, you are sending out videos and wishing people well and genuinely caring for people's welfare, especially, a situation with Texas down there recently. I think when you combine that with the magic of Star Wars and also, the character, I think some magical things can happen. But ultimately, I feel like, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of, there's some crazies out there where I think some of my peers at higher levels, they have to keep their distance. But I think what you're seeing is a little bit of the magic of just, I think, genuinely staying humble, appreciative, and also just enthusiastic, and excited, which I think a lot of the Star Wars fans are, and they want to kind of see that reverberate through one of the characters, So thank you so much for noticing, but I think that would be probably the answer. And I just can't tell you how proud I am because, again, I know that so many would love to have this opportunity. So to be able to sort of give that happiness to people while, just sending a video or just letting them know that I'm their friend and I'm following them too. I don't need to have 5 followers on my Instagram just because, I want to look cool. I think that definitely is an attribute there. And I appreciate everyone.
Nice.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Guys, have any more questions? We're going to some lightning round questions.
No, go ahead to the lightning round.
Yeah, we can go to lightning round.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel. A little, for me, I think we just have a broader spectrum of, sometimes I feel like DC is a little too one note in terms of brooding, which I think is beautiful artistically. But Marvel, I just like sort of the charisma and, a lot of credits given to that core A-list cast as well. And I'm just basically going by that, not the comics.
Okay.
But I would say Marvel there.
What's your favorite MCU movie then?
Believe it or not, Captain America 2 just sticks out to me because the stunts and those scenes, the stage combat, and I think that was around the time that I was doing one on my own, I was just completely floored with, and I thought it had a beautiful arc of a story there as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like Winter Soldier. I think it was very underrated and all. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. What's your most valuable Star Wars toy you have over in your case? One that like means the most to you, not necessarily monetary value.
It's an old oh boy, I don't know if I can show you. It's an old comic. It's a large comic there of the Marvel from when I was a kid, and it's again, it wouldn't be for sale. It'd probably be rated number 2 on the list. But it goes back to that time that I was in an apartment with my mom and my sister. Just bringing back those sort of magical memories of being a kid and just discovering it for the first time. So I think it doesn't really have any value just due to the condition that it's in, but it just brings back those childhood memories there.
That's awesome. Okay, what was your favorite Star Wars prequel movie? Like 1, 2, or 3?
I don't mean to have like one of these wishy-washy answers, but I really love 3 significant parts of all 3. One, at the end of 1. 2, I thought just the clone planet. Forgive me, I'm forgetting it right now. What is it? Not Geonis, no. But just the water planet there with the standoff between Jango and Obi-Wan was fascinating. And then again, just going back to the parallels of family. To me, it's sort of your best friend, and especially as guys. We had best guy friends, and the parallels of brotherhood. The ending of part 3. But if I had to pick one specifically, I would just say 3 ultimately. But those specific 3 parts, I truly enjoyed in the prequels.
Gotcha. If you could have anyone like return, like I know people have been campaigning for Mace Windu to come back in a movie, like who would be like your preferred? I mean, obviously not yourself, present party excluded, but who would be the return character you would love to see like them do a movie or a TV show on?
I hope that they're going to be right on this path, but I'm hoping to see a hero walk. Boba standing maybe in Jabba's palace, and to see a hero walk of Dengar Boss, Forlom, and Zuckuss walking in and saying, "What do you need?" And that would be freaking badass. And hopefully Gekko right there with him. It's like, hey, you guys forget me, I'm over here.
Like cracking beers, like, hey, you guys need me?
Okay, all right, no problem. Let's be over here. That for me would be bounty hunter awesomeness. And I mean, Dave and John, I mean, they're just, I think they just have their finger perfectly on the true Star Wars fans. So hopefully we'll be seeing something like that. I think it'd be awesome.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm very excited for a lot of the stuff they have going on for next year. So it's gonna be awesome. Even for like Marvel fans too. Like their Marvel lineup's insane. Like, have you been watching Vision Wanda at all, or?
I have not. I've been so busy with booking. Literally, I had a few agents last year. For me, the whole thing about giving back to small businesses was just wanting to have that direct contact. Because with the agents, they behind your back will ask the store for like X amount of dollars to have me appear. Mm-hmm. And because I'm literally single-handedly booking this and working with the stores, I haven't had time. But I've heard so many great things about it. I'm looking forward to checking it out. I'd like to binge watch it with my kids there.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Your kids are probably really interested in a lot of stuff. They have to be. Like, you're so passionate, so I can't. Yeah,
absolutely. I've been making the mistake lately of getting into these depressing Netflix documentaries, and I got to stop because I just one after the next is like, oh my god, what the hell? This world sucks, But yeah, they're awesome, and we're gonna have I'm gonna take them half the tour. We're going from LA and I'm taking them all the way to Chicago, but we're going to hit some really random spots along the way and try some fun stuff there as well.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. All right. Sit for Jedi.
I like Jedi because ultimately for me, it goes along the teachings of Yoda in terms of, we've all had situations. Shoot. I mean, even with turbulence on a plane, I think, not to get nerdy, but it's like, you think of Obi-Wan sometimes with heavy turbulence. I had a lot of flying to do last year before COVID to where, it's just try to find your center. So I would just say Jedi just because the parallels of helping you with life as well.
What would be your preferred lightsaber color if you were a Jedi?
Oh, that's a great question. Who can go? One of the most sleek characters altogether there was Jedi Luke. I mean, it was so cool to see that last episode.
The green one, yeah.
You got to go with green. That was just. I remember having that figure. That was one of the best Christmases, also with Jabba's palace, and then also all the side characters. Now, some of them are my friends. I can't believe Steve Constantino. If you ever get a chance, he's such a great guy. He's one of the Gamorrean guards. And then, of course, Corey D. Williams, Billy D. Williams' son, who was Klaatu. But just having those side characters and having hours and hours, I can't believe it now with all the social media and we're all glued to our iPads and iPhones. But having just hours of fun with just those characters, Squidman with Return of the Jedi. But Jedi Luke was just absolutely awesome.
All right.
Cool.
You guys have any more questions or?
No, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
this was good.
Yeah.
I think we all do. Yeah.
Really appreciate
Thank you very much,
on.
Dominic.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. All the best. Look forward to seeing you guys hopefully down in Florida. For anyone, just in terms of any information, GekkoTheBountyHunter.com at the end of this week, we'll be able to start offering signed the comic book copies.
All four covers look awesome.
Lair of the Gecko on Facebook is where you follow for all the events that we'll be going to throughout the country there starting in April there.
And Dom, where could people follow you? Like, are you popular on social media? Like, where can they follow you at?
Sure. Twitter, I just started up there more or less, or just restarted. It's called Gekko the Hunter. And then Dominic Pace 1 on Instagram, Dominic Pace on Facebook, and then also Lair of the Gecko, and then GekkoTheBountyHunter.com for the comic there, which we'll be offering there in about a week.
Awesome. And they can find all your tour dates on your website. Is that where it's all posted?
On Lair of the Gecko, Lair of the Gecko. And then also on Twitter and Instagram there as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, we really appreciate you coming out. It's been great. It's awesome nerding out with Star Wars with you. Definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.
Hope to see you guys in Tampa. Have a great evening, and may the force be with you guys.
Yes, sir.
May the force be with you.